The first rays of sunlight streamed through the half-open blinds of Jordan Evans' modest Boston home, casting a warm glow across the breakfast table. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee mingled with the faint scent of toast and sizzling bacon. Jordan, a tall man with streaks of gray in his hair and kind eyes that had seen both joy and hardship, moved with practiced efficiency, pouring milk into cereal bowls and keeping an eye on the bustling household. It wasn't easy. 5 children, 2 of whom were his foster kids, plus the grandchildren of his daughter Laura, filled every corner of the home, but Jordan wouldn't have it any other way. Laura bustled into the kitchen, hair tied haphazardly in a bun and a sleepy smile on her face. Her daughter Rachel, bright-eyed and curious, clutched a doll while her younger brother Peter rubbed the sleep from his eyes. "Morning, Dad," Laura said, offering Jordan a quick hug before bending down to nudge Rachel awake. "Rachel, honey, eat your breakfast. We don't want you running off to school on an empty stomach again."
Laura laughed softly. "It's chaos, Dad, but it's a good kind of chaos. Everyone's happy. That's what matters, right?" Jordan nodded, feeling a swell of pride. Despite the challenges, the household had a rhythm, a harmony born of love, care, and mutual respect. He had been through hard times, seen loss and disappointment, yet the sight of the children laughing and bickering, the smell of breakfast, and the soft morning light reminded him that life, in its simplest form, could be beautiful. As they settled down to eat, Jordan listened to the lively chatter around him. Rachel excitedly recounted a story from school about a science project involving a homemade volcano. "And then Miss Hargrove said it looked just like a real eruption," she exclaimed, waving her hands for emphasis. Peter, never one to stay out of a conversation, interrupted. "Well, I bet mine would have been bigger. I would have used more baking soda."
Gavin, barely looking up from his book, said quietly, "Sometimes bigger isn't always better, Peter. Volcanoes need balance to erupt properly." His calm, logical voice contrasted with the chaos around the table, and even Peter paused to consider it for a moment. Nina, ever the observer, chimed in with a thoughtful nod. "He's right, Peter. Balance is important in experiments and in life, too." Jordan smiled at the exchange, feeling a warmth that was hard to put into words. These children, though from different circumstances, had woven themselves into the fabric of his life. Each morning brought its challenges: disputes over breakfast seating, arguments about who got the last slice of toast, or reminders to brush teeth before school. Yet every morning also brought laughter, stories, and the comforting reassurance that this chaotic little family was held together by more than just routine. It was love.
After breakfast, the hustle continued. Laura ushered Rachel and Peter toward the front door, making sure backpacks were zipped, lunches packed, and jackets zipped against the crisp Boston air. "Come on, you two," she said gently. "School won't wait for anyone. And remember, be kind today. You never know who might need a smile." Outside, the children ran to the waiting school bus, waving goodbye. Jordan and Laura lingered on the porch for a moment, the quiet aftermath of the morning's chaos settling around them. "Dad," Laura began, her voice tinged with fatigue, "sometimes I wonder how you do it. 5 kids, work, keeping the house running, you make it look effortless." Jordan laughed softly, the sound warm and reassuring. "I don't make it look effortless, Laura. I just make it worth it. These kids, they need someone steady, someone who cares, and I love seeing them grow up happy and safe. That's all the reward I need." He paused, looking at her. "You're doing your best too, you know. Don't ever forget that." Laura smiled, squeezing her father's hand before heading back inside. Jordan lingered for a moment longer, glancing at the quiet street, the morning sunlight reflecting off the windows of neighboring homes. Boston was alive with possibilities, and even in a world filled with uncertainty, he felt a deep sense of purpose. His life, with all its responsibilities and unexpected turns, was full, and he wouldn't trade it for anything. By mid-morning, the house had settled into a softer rhythm.
Gavin returned to his homework at the dining table, Nina practiced piano in the living room, and Jordan finally allowed himself a cup of coffee, sitting back to watch the sunlight filter through the curtains. In this home, chaos and calm intertwined, creating a life full of love, lessons, and laughter. It wasn't perfect, but it was real, and for Jordan Evans, that was all that mattered. Every scraped knee, every loud argument, every bedtime story told with exaggerated voices, every laugh echoing down the hallway. It was a reminder that family wasn't just about blood. It was about care, responsibility, and the willingness to stand by each other no matter the circumstances. In the heart of Boston, in a home that thrived on love and understanding, Jordan found peace. And for him, that was enough to face any challenge the day might bring. The morning air in Boston felt heavier than usual as Laura Evans sat in the small hospital waiting room, her hands clenched tightly in her lap. She had spent the night pacing the sterile floors, her mind a jumble of fear and frustration. Mark, her husband, was in critical condition after his latest relapse had led to a severe accident. The doctors had been clear. Urgent surgery was required, or the consequences could be fatal. Laura's heart ached as she thought about the man she had once loved and the family she had fought to protect. "Mom?" Rachel whispered, clutching her mother's hand. Her eyes were wide, reflecting both fear and confusion. Peter, barely 7, peeked from behind the corner of the chair, his small face pale with worry. "Is Daddy going to be okay?" he asked, his voice trembling. Laura forced a tight smile, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. "We hope so, sweetheart," she said softly, trying to steady her own emotions. "The doctors are doing everything they can." But even as she spoke words of reassurance, Laura knew the reality of the situation. Mark's habits had always been a source of tension between them. Alcohol, gambling, and recklessness had driven wedges between them time and again. And now, when he needed help most, the financial burden of surgery loomed over her like a storm cloud. Desperation made her heart pound. She had no one else to turn to, or so she thought. Her thoughts drifted to her father, Jordan, who had always been a pillar of strength for her and the children. She picked up her phone and dialed his number, praying he would understand. "Dad," she began when he answered, her voice quivering, "it's Mark. He needs surgery. It's urgent. Please, we need help." Jordan's response was measured, firm, and unmistakably final. "Laura, I can't pay for this surgery," he said, his tone gentle but unwavering. "You know why. He's made his choices time and time again. I can't keep bailing him out, no matter how much you plead. You need to think about your children and your own life. I'm sorry." Laura's grip on the phone tightened until her knuckles turned white. "But Dad, it's his life. He could die," she cried, her voice breaking. "I don't care about his mistakes. I just want him to live." Jordan's sigh echoed through the phone. "I know, Laura, and I wish I could help. But helping him this time doesn't solve anything. It won't change the pattern. You have to make the hard choices, for yourself, for the kids. You have to be the one who protects them." Tears streamed down Laura's face as she pressed the phone to her chest. She felt trapped between her love for Mark and the stark reality her father had laid out. The words, though harsh, carried a bitter truth. Jordan had always been practical, a man guided by reason rather than sentiment, and now his decision forced Laura to confront the consequences of years of neglect and irresponsibility. By afternoon, the hospital's sterile corridors had taken on a suffocating weight. Laura had made her peace with her father's decision, but it came at a painful cost. She could not watch Mark suffer or gamble with his life without taking some action. With a heavy heart, she gathered her children and began the walk home, each step a painful reminder of the fracture in her family. "We'll be okay," she whispered to Rachel and Peter, trying to convince herself as much as them. "We'll figure it out, together."
The house felt eerily quiet when they returned, the absence of Mark's chaotic energy strikingly noticeable. Laura sat at the kitchen table, her head in her hands.
What am I going to do now? She murmured, almost to herself. The children, sensing the tension but not fully understanding it, hovered near her, seeking comfort. Rachel climbed onto her mother's lap, wrapping her small arms around her neck. "Mom, we'll be okay?" she asked softly. Laura's tears flowed freely. "Yes, darling, we'll be okay, I promise," she said, holding them close. But the truth weighed heavily on her. Mark's life was hanging by a thread, and there was nothing she could do. That night, Laura tossed and turned, unable to sleep. She could hear Peter's soft breathing from the adjacent room, and the faint rustle of Gavin and Nina settling into their beds. She thought of Jordan, of the firm refusal that had shattered her hopes, and of the looming reality that she had to face alone. "Maybe Dad's right," she whispered to herself in the darkness. "Maybe it's time to put the children first and leave the rest behind." Morning brought devastating news. The call from the hospital arrived before she had even opened her eyes. Mark had succumbed to his injuries overnight. Laura sat in stunned silence, her body frozen with grief. Peter's small voice trembled as he asked, "Mom, is he gone?" Rachel clung to her mother, silent tears streaming down her cheeks. Laura nodded, her own sobs choked back. "Yes, sweetheart," she said, her voice barely audible. "He's gone." The void left by Mark's death was more than just physical. It was the absence of a partner, a husband, and a father. Laura felt the weight of responsibility pressing down harder than ever before. She looked at her children, their innocent faces full of fear and confusion, and made a decision. She could not allow this tragedy to consume them. She had to be strong for herself and for them. Later that day, Laura packed what little belongings they could carry. She needed to leave the house that had been filled with memories of love and mistakes, a place now tinged with sorrow. "We're going to be okay," she told the children again, trying to infuse strength into the words. "We're going home to Dad. He'll help us." Rachel, still processing the shock, whispered, "Mom, will things ever be normal again?" Laura hugged her tightly, kissing the top of her head. "Normal is different now, sweetie," she said softly. "But we'll find a new kind of normal, one where we take care of each other and stay together no matter what." As they stepped out into the cold Boston morning, the city felt indifferent to their pain. The bustling streets and honking cars were a sharp contrast to the quiet devastation in Laura's heart. Yet in that moment, she found a glimmer of hope. There was still love, still family, still a chance to rebuild. And as long as they had each other, they would endure. Jordan, waiting at the house, saw them arrive and opened the door with a mix of concern and understanding. "Laura," he said quietly, taking in the children's tear-streaked faces, "I'm so sorry." Laura nodded, a faint smile breaking through her grief. "I know, Dad. We'll get through this. We have to, for the kids." She held Rachel and Peter close, feeling the weight of the past few days, but also the first stirrings of resilience. A family may have been torn, but with love and determination, it could still be mended. The chill of early evening clung to the streets of Boston as Laura Evans navigated the familiar path home from the hospital. Her mind was a swirl of grief and exhaustion, the recent loss of Mark weighing heavily on her shoulders. The city, usually a comforting bustle of life and movement, felt unusually cold and indifferent tonight. Cars homed past, pedestrians hurried along the sidewalks, but Laura barely noticed. Her focus was consumed by thoughts of how to care for her children in the wake of so much loss. As she turned a corner near an alleyway, a faint shuffling sound caught her attention. At first, she thought it was the wind playing with discarded newspapers, but a soft whimper followed, and she froze. Laura's heart clenched. "Hello?" she called gently, her voice cautious. From the shadows emerged a small boy, no older than 10, his clothes tattered and dirty, his face streaked with grime and exhaustion. His dark eyes met hers, wide and wary, and he flinched back instinctively. Laura's instincts kicked in immediately. She crouched down to meet him at eye level. "Hey there, are you okay?" she asked softly. The boy shook his head, hugging his thin arms to his chest. I don't have anywhere to go," he whispered, his voice barely audible. Laura felt a pang of sadness and empathy. She had faced her own turmoil today, yet seeing this child alone and vulnerable awakened a fierce protectiveness within her. "Don't worry," Laura said firmly, holding out her hand. "Come with me, you don't have to be out here alone anymore." The boy hesitated, glancing over his shoulder as if expecting someone or something to chase him away. I can't," he stammered. They'll be mad if I leave." Laura shook her head gently, her eyes soft but unwavering. "No one's going to be mad. I'm not here to hurt you. I just want to help." After a long moment of hesitation, the boy stepped forward and took her hand. Relief washed over Laura, and she squeezed his hand gently, guiding him toward the car. "My name's Laura," she said as they walked. "What's yours?" The boy hesitated again, then whispered, Sam Turner." Laura nodded, committing his name to memory. "Well, Sam, you're coming home with me. My kids will love you, and you'll have a warm bed and something to eat." Sam's eyes widened slightly at the promise, the faintest flicker of hope breaking through his wary expression. The drive home was quiet, punctuated only by the soft hum of the tires on the pavement. Laura kept glancing at Sam, noting the dirt under his nails, the torn shoes, and the empty expression in his eyes. She had seen enough hardship in her life to recognize the weight of survival etched onto a child's face. "It's going to be okay," she said softly, though more to herself than to him. Sam's gaze flickered toward her, and for the first time, a tiny, hesitant smile appeared. When they arrived home, the children were waiting by the window, curiosity written across their faces. Rachel's eyes lit up immediately when she saw Sam. "Mom, who is he?" she asked, rushing to the door as soon as it opened. Laura knelt down, introducing them. "This is Sam. He doesn't have a home, so he's going to stay with us for a while." Rachel's expression softened, her natural empathy shining through. "Hi, Sam, I'm Rachel," she said brightly, holding out her hand. Sam glanced at her hand, then at Laura, before cautiously shaking it. "Hi," he muttered. Peter, following close behind, peeked at Sam from the corner of his eye. "Are you going to be nice to him?" he asked, his voice protective but tentative. Laura smiled and ruffled his hair. "Of course, he's going to be part of our family, Peter. That means kindness and care for everyone." Sam, who had been quiet until now, muttered a shy, "I'll try." Laura could feel the weight of his words. They were hesitant, guarded, but sincere. The rest of the evening was a mixture of small introductions and tentative bonding. Laura gave Sam a warm bath and clean clothes, items she had kept ready for guests or emergencies, while Rachel hovered nearby, excited to help. "I'll show him his room," Rachel exclaimed, tugging Sam gently by the hand. Sam followed reluctantly, but allowed himself to be guided. The room, though modest, was cozy and welcoming, with a small bed, a soft blanket, and shelves lined with books and toys. Sam's eyes widened, and for a moment, the world seemed less harsh. Dinner was another test of patience and trust. Sam hesitated at the table, unsure of what was expected of him. Laura placed a plate in front of him, smiling encouragingly. "Eat as much as you want," she said warmly. "There's plenty for everyone." Rachel slid her plate closer, offering a piece of bread. "Here, Sam, try this. You'll like it." Sam hesitated, then took it, nibbling cautiously. Laura watched as the tension in his shoulders eased slightly. For the first time in what felt like forever, Sam was safe. As the night wore on, a quiet rhythm settled over the house. Sam sat with Rachel on the couch, listening to her recount stories from school and showing him drawings she had made. "You like drawing?" she asked, noticing his gaze linger on her sketches. Sam nodded shyly. I used to, sometimes." Rachel smiled brightly. "Then you can draw with me. We'll make our own stories." Sam's lips curved into a small, genuine smile, and Laura felt a lump rise in her throat.
The connection forming between these two children, strangers until today, was instant and pure. Before bed, Laura tucked Sam into the small bed prepared for him. "You're safe here," she whispered, brushing a stray lock of hair from his forehead. "I know it's a lot to take in, but this is your home now. We take care of each other." Sam nodded quietly, his eyes reflecting both relief and cautious hope. "Thank you, Mrs. Evans," he said softly. I've never had anyone care like this before." Laura's heart ached at the words, and she smiled gently. "You don't have to thank me, Sam. Just remember that you belong here now." Rachel leaned against Sam's bed, whispering conspiratorially, "You know, we're going to be best friends, like sisters almost." Sam giggled, a sound so light and unburdened that it filled the room with warmth. "Sisters?" he repeated, testing the word, and Rachel nodded enthusiastically. "Yes, we'll share secrets, play games, and look out for each other. You'll see, it's going to be fun." That night, as Laura closed the door to Sam's room, she felt a quiet sense of fulfillment. The day had been overwhelming and filled with sorrow, yet it had also brought unexpected hope. Sam's presence, tentative as it was, had brought a new warmth to their lives. The children were already forming bonds that promised laughter and support, and Laura felt a glimmer of peace. Perhaps this was the start of something new, something healing and meaningful. As she stood in the hallway, listening to the soft breathing of the children settling into sleep, Laura whispered a silent promise to herself. She would protect Sam, nurture him, and give him the childhood he deserved. In return, she had no doubt she would bring joy, loyalty, and love into their lives, enriching their small family in ways they could not yet imagine. The city outside might be harsh and unfeeling, but inside the Evans household, a new chapter had begun. A chapter of compassion, connection, and hope. And as the night deepened, Laura knew one thing for certain: Sam was home.
The Evans household had transformed over the years into a warm, bustling home filled with laughter, music, and the quiet hum of daily life. The children had grown, each in their own unique way, and Jordan Evans had continued to guide them with unwavering patience. Sam, once the timid, homeless boy Laura had taken in, had blossomed into a talented, ambitious teenager. His dark eyes now carried the confidence and spark of someone who had endured hardships and emerged stronger. Yet, despite the changes, he never forgot the family who had given him a home, and Rachel, whose kindness had been a constant anchor in his life. "Rachel, check this out!" Sam exclaimed one evening in the living room, strumming a few chords on his guitar. His voice had grown strong and melodic, a sound that seemed almost magical in its clarity. Rachel, now in her late teens, sat cross-legged on the couch, smiling encouragingly. "I love it, Sam. That melody is amazing. You're getting really good," she said, clapping her hands softly. Sam grinned, a hint of blush rising on his cheeks. "I couldn't have done it without you," he admitted quietly, looking at her with genuine gratitude. "You've always believed in me." Rachel shook her head, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "You don't need me to believe in you, Sam. You've always had it in you. I just cheered from the sidelines." Her voice carried the warmth of decades of friendship, the kind that only grows stronger with shared memories and mutual respect. Sam's gaze softened. "Still," he said, strumming the chords again, "you were there when I needed someone most. I'll never forget it." Meanwhile, across town, Gavin had quietly been carving his own path to success. The once quiet, observant foster child had matured into a disciplined, principled young man, deeply committed to his career in technology. His days were consumed with coding, meetings, and strategic planning, but he never let ambition compromise his values. Gavin's life was a testament to hard work, focus, and the ability to rise above distractions, even those that might tempt him away from what he knew was right. One afternoon, as Gavin was reviewing reports in his home office, his assistant Monica popped her head in, her expression flirtatious as ever. "Gavin, you've been working non-stop. Why don't you take a break? Maybe go grab lunch with me?" she teased, leaning casually against the doorway. Gavin didn't look up from his laptop. "I appreciate the offer, Monica, but I have work to do. Now, if you don't mind, I'd like to focus on these numbers," he said firmly, his tone polite but decisive. Monica's smile faltered slightly, but she laughed, understanding that Gavin's priorities were not easily swayed. "You're impossible," she muttered, retreating from the room. Gavin shook his head slightly, returning to his calculations. He prided himself on maintaining professionalism, not only in his work but in his relationships. He understood that success was fleeting without integrity, and that every decision mattered, both personally and professionally. Even as he watched the city of Boston hum with activity beyond his window, he knew that he had found his path and intended to walk it with unwavering commitment. Back in the Evans household, Sam and Rachel's bond deepened with each passing year. They shared music sessions, homework help, and countless late-night talks about dreams, fears, and the future. Rachel had grown into a thoughtful, compassionate young woman, her heart and mind shaped by the love she had received from her family and the responsibility of looking after her younger brother, Peter. Sam, in turn, had learned discipline, humility, and the importance of loyalty and gratitude, lessons he carried into every performance and opportunity that came his way.
One evening, as Sam practiced a new song he had written, Rachel stopped him mid-chord. "Sam, this is incredible," she said, her eyes shining. "You're going to be famous one day. I just know it." Sam looked down, humility etched into his features. "I hope so," he said softly, "but I don't think I'd have gotten this far without you, Rachel. You kept me going when I had nothing, literally nothing. I owe you more than I can ever repay." Rachel laughed softly, brushing it off. "You don't owe me anything. I just cared about you, that's all." Her words were simple, yet they held a power that resonated deeply with Sam. He understood that love and support could shape a life as much as talent or ambition. "Well," he said with a small grin, "then I'll make sure I make it worth your while. I'll make you proud." Rachel smiled, leaning back on the couch, her heart swelling with quiet pride. "I know you will, Sam. I know you will." Meanwhile, Gavin's career continued to soar. He had developed a startup that was gaining traction, earning respect and admiration in the tech community. His analytical mind, coupled with a moral compass that never wavered, set him apart from his peers. Yet, despite his professional success, Gavin remained grounded, always returning home to the family that had nurtured him. He spent time with Nina, helping her with school projects and encouraging her to pursue her passions, while keeping a watchful eye on Peter and Rachel, whose presence in his life brought a unique blend of warmth and occasional exasperation. On a crisp autumn morning, Jordan found Gavin sitting in the sunlit kitchen, sipping coffee and reviewing notes for a new project. "You've really grown, Gavin," Jordan said, his voice tinged with both pride and nostalgia. "I can hardly believe how far you've come. I remember the quiet boy who would sit and read for hours. Now look at you." Gavin smiled modestly. "I've just been working hard, Dad. I want to make the most of the opportunities we've had." Jordan nodded, his eyes glinting with approval. "And you're doing it with integrity, which is even more important. I'm proud of you, son." As years passed, Sam's music career began to take off. Local performances turned into regional shows, and soon he was recording singles that gained attention across the city. Despite the growing fame, Sam remained humble and grounded, never forgetting the family that had saved him from a life of uncertainty. He regularly spoke to Rachel, seeking her advice and sharing successes and setbacks alike. "I couldn't have done this without you," he told her one afternoon during a phone call, the excitement in his voice palpable. "You believed in me when no one else did." Rachel's heart swelled. "I've always known you had it in you, Sam. You just had to see it for yourself." Through music, business, and daily life, the Evans household thrived in a balance of love, ambition, and trust. Sam's gratitude toward Rachel and the family as a whole never waned. Gavin's steadfast dedication to his principles and career provided a steady foundation for everyone around him. And Rachel, the heart of the home, continued to nurture bonds, offer encouragement, and quietly shape the lives of those she cared for most.
Even as Boston's seasons shifted, from crisp autumns to snowy winters, warm springs, and bright summers, the household remained a beacon of stability and hope. Lessons learned through hardship had fostered resilience, compassion, and loyalty. Sam would grow to fame, Gavin would achieve professional success, and Rachel would continue to radiate warmth and support, forming the core of a family whose ties were deeper than mere blood. And through it all, the quiet knowledge persisted. No matter the challenges ahead, love, trust, and unwavering support could turn even the most uncertain beginnings into stories of triumph. In the heart of Boston, a boy who once had nothing and a young man guided by principles were both finding their place in the world, side by side with the family that had given them the roots and wings they needed to flourish.
Gavin Evans sat at his sleek glass desk, the soft hum of his computer and the faint clatter of keyboards from his team filling the modern Boston office. The sunlight streamed through the large windows, casting long shadows across the room. He was immersed in reviewing the latest projections for his tech startup, analyzing numbers and planning strategies. Everything about Gavin's demeanor radiated focus and precision, the hallmarks of a man who had fought hard for his success and maintained an unwavering commitment to his principles. The quiet was broken by a soft, deliberate knock on the office door. "Come in," Gavin said without looking up, already anticipating who it might be. Monica, his assistant, strolled in, a coy smile playing on her lips. Her presence had always been slightly distracting, a mixture of charm and subtle flirtation that she wielded like a weapon. "Morning, Gavin," she said, leaning lightly against the edge of his desk, one hand on her hip. "You're working too hard, you know. Don't you think you deserve a little break?" Gavin's eyes flicked to her briefly, then returned to the spreadsheets before him. "Morning, Monica," he said evenly. "I appreciate your concern, but deadlines don't take breaks, and neither do I. Now, if there's work to discuss, let's focus on that." Monica's smile didn't waver. If anything, it deepened. "Oh, I'm not here to talk about work," she purred, tilting her head slightly. "I just thought maybe you'd like some company for lunch. Alone. Just the two of us." Gavin's jaw tightened imperceptibly. He had encountered this kind of situation before, people testing boundaries, using charm to distract or manipulate, but he was steadfast in his ethics. "Monica, I value professionalism, both mine and yours," he said, setting his pen down and leaning back slightly. "I'm not interested in anything outside of work. Let's keep our focus on the project, please." Monica leaned a little closer, lowering her voice. "Come on, Gavin. We're both adults. It's just lunch. No big deal." Her fingers lightly brushed the edge of a stack of papers on his desk, deliberately close to him. Gavin kept his composure, though a flicker of tension passed over his features. "I said no, Monica," he replied calmly but firmly. "I don't mix personal matters with professional obligations. If this is going to continue, I may have to reconsider our working arrangement." Her expression faltered for just a moment, but she quickly regained her playful demeanor. "You're so serious all the time," she said, tilting her head with mock disappointment. "You should loosen up a bit." Gavin shook his head gently, a faint smile tugging at the corner of his lips. Not at her teasing, but at the predictability of human nature. Seriousness isn't a flaw. It's a necessity in a business like ours. I don't compromise my principles for fleeting distractions. You should respect that, Monica. She sighed dramatically, stepping back from the desk and letting her shoulders slump. "You're impossible," she muttered, though her tone lacked true anger. Gavin simply nodded, returning to his work. "Thank you for understanding. Now, if there are no work-related issues, I have a lot to accomplish." Monica gave a small, reluctant nod and turned to leave, her heels clicking against the polished floor. Before she reached the door, she paused and added lightly, "You're no fun, you know that, right?" Gavin didn't respond. He was already deep in thought again. As the day progressed, the incident with Monica lingered in Gavin's mind, not because he had any desire for her, but because it was a reminder of the challenges he faced in maintaining integrity in a world full of temptations.
Gavin prided himself on his discipline, and situations like this tested that discipline. He understood that giving in to distraction or desire could compromise everything he had worked for, not only professionally, but personally. His principles were not rigid rules imposed from outside. They were values he had chosen consciously, every day, shaped by the household he grew up in and the lessons Jordan and Laura had instilled in him.
Later that afternoon, Gavin found himself in the break room, making a quick cup of coffee. Monica appeared again, this time leaning casually against the counter, her expression unreadable. "Gavin, you're really good at saying no," she said, half teasing, half admiring. "It's impressive, in a way." Gavin raised an eyebrow but remained composed. "It's not about being impressive. It's about doing the right thing. Ethics, respect, and boundaries aren't optional. They're essential in business and in life." Monica studied him for a long moment, as if weighing the sincerity of his words. "You're different from most men I know," she said softly, almost hesitantly. Gavin met her gaze, steady and unwavering. "I've had my share of examples to learn from," he said, his tone thoughtful. "I've seen what happens when people compromise too much, when they let short-term desires dictate their decisions. I don't want that for myself, and I don't want it affecting those who depend on me." There was a pause, and Monica finally nodded, a trace of respect creeping into her smile. "All right, Gavin, I get it," she said. "You really mean it. Well, I'll leave you to your work then." Gavin offered a polite nod, already turning back to his laptop. The brief interaction left a lingering sense of clarity for both of them. He had maintained his boundaries without hostility, and she had understood the strength behind his principles. Returning to his desk, Gavin reflected on the lessons life had taught him. Integrity was not something one displayed only in public or when convenient. It was a daily choice, often tested in small, seemingly insignificant ways. The challenge lay in remaining true to oneself, even when the world offered easier, more tempting alternatives. In a career as competitive and fast-paced as his, maintaining that kind of discipline was not always easy, but it was essential. By late afternoon, the office had quieted, and Gavin allowed himself a brief pause, stretching and looking out the window at the Boston skyline. The city shimmered with opportunity and energy, a landscape of endless ambition. He had worked hard to carve a place for himself, building not only a business, but a reputation for reliability, honesty, and moral clarity. He knew that moments of temptation, like Monica's flirtation, would continue to arise. But he also knew that his choices defined him far more than anyone else's opinions ever could. Later, at home, Gavin shared the day's events with Nina, who had always been curious about the dynamics of adult relationships. "So, did she began, hesitating, "try to, distract you from work?" Gavin smiled, shaking his head. "Yes, she did," he admitted. "But it wasn't just about distraction. It was a test, in a way, of what I value. I had to make a choice, and I chose integrity over momentary temptation. You'll find in life, Nina, there are countless moments like this. Your values are the compass that guides you through them." Nina nodded thoughtfully, absorbing the lesson. "I think I understand," she said softly. "It's about doing what's right, even if it's hard." Gavin smiled warmly, ruffling her hair. "Exactly. It's not always easy, but it's always worth it. That's how you build trust, respect, and a life you can be proud of." As evening fell over the city, Gavin returned to his desk for one last review of the day's work. Monica had left, and the office was silent, save for the faint hum of his computer. He allowed himself a moment of quiet satisfaction, knowing that he had navigated the day's challenge without compromising his principles. In a world full of distractions, temptations, and shortcuts, Gavin Evans had chosen the path of integrity, a path that, while demanding, would ensure lasting success and personal fulfillment. And in that choice, he found not just professional strength, but a deeper sense of self-respect, one that would guide him through all the trials and triumphs yet to come. The morning sun had barely risen over Boston when Laura Evans kissed her children goodbye and set off to visit her father, Jordan.
The air was crisp with early autumn chill, carrying the faint scent of fallen leaves and distant city traffic. Rachel and Peter waved from the driveway, their small faces glowing with excitement at the thought of seeing their grandfather. Laura's heart swelled with love for her children, tempered with the quiet ache of recent hardships. Life had been tumultuous, but these moments, the simple ones, were precious, reminders of why she had fought so hard to keep her family together. "Drive safe, Mom," Rachel called as Laura buckled herself into the car. Peter clutched a small toy car in his hand, his voice trembling slightly. "Don't be late for dinner." Laura smiled, reaching over to ruffle Peter's hair. "I'll be careful, my loves, I promise, and I'll be back before you know it." She adjusted the rearview mirror, watching their faces for a moment longer, then started the engine, unaware that this drive would change everything. The roads were deceptively calm at morning. Laura hummed softly to herself, letting the rhythm of the city ease her thoughts. Her mind wandered over recent events, the passing of Mark, the challenge of raising Rachel and Peter, the love and support of her father, and the quiet pride she felt in seeing the children grow. Her car glided along the highway, sunlight reflecting off the pavement, and for a moment, the world seemed ordinary and safe. Then, in the blink of an eye, chaos erupted. Another vehicle, its driver distracted, swerved violently into Laura's lane. Time slowed as she tried to react, but it was too late. The impact was sudden, violent, and devastating. The world around her became a blur of metal, glass, and screeching tires. Pain exploded across her body, her vision fragmented, and for a fleeting second, all she could think of was her children. "Rachel, Peter," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the cacophony of the crash. Jordan Evans, waiting anxiously for his daughter's arrival, heard the distant wail of sirens from his study window. A cold dread gripped his heart. Something was wrong. He ran outside, scanning the street for any sign of his daughter's car. When he saw it, crumpled and overturned, his knees buckled and his chest tightened. The world seemed to pause as he rushed to the scene, aided by bystanders who had already called emergency services. His mind raced, hoping against hope that Laura might survive. Paramedics worked frantically to pull Laura from the wreckage. Jordan watched, his hands trembling, every heartbeat stretching into an eternity. There was a moment of hope when she moaned weakly, her eyes fluttering open, but it was short-lived. The injuries were too severe. Despite their best efforts, Laura's life slipped away, leaving a hollow ache that would never fully heal. Jordan held her hand as she took her last breath, tears streaming down his face. "Laura, my girl, I'm so sorry," he whispered, his voice cracking with grief. The news of Laura's death sent shockwaves through the household. Rachel and Peter were inconsolable, their small hands clutching each other as they tried to comprehend the incomprehensible. Jordan, though shattered by the loss, knew he had to make immediate decisions for their care. The children needed stability, a safe environment where they could begin to process their grief. With a heavy heart, he turned to Gavin and Nina, who had long been a steady presence in their lives.
"Gavin, Nina, I need your help," Jordan said, his voice strained but resolute. "Laura, she's gone. I can't take care of them on my own right now. They need a home, a family, someone who can guide them." Gavin, who had been sitting quietly in the living room, rose immediately. The weight of the words struck him, but he kept his composure, knowing that Rachel and Peter needed strength more than sorrow. "Of course, Jordan, you don't have to ask twice. We'll take care of them," he said firmly, determination in his eyes. Nina, who had always been close to Rachel and Peter, nodded, her own tears glistening but held in check. "We'll make sure they're safe," she added softly, "and we'll be here for them every step of the way." Rachel and Peter clung to Jordan as he gently explained what was happening. "You're going to stay with Gavin and Nina for a while," he said. "They love you, and they'll take care of you, just like your mom would want." The children's faces were pale with shock, and tears streamed freely, but they nodded, trusting their father's words.
The drive to Gavin's house was quiet, the city passing by in a blur of autumn colors. Rachel sat in the back seat, her small hands folded in her lap, while Peter held a stuffed animal close to his chest. Gavin drove with steady hands, his jaw set, knowing that the responsibility he was assuming was enormous. He glanced at Rachel through the rearview mirror. "You're safe now," he said gently. "We'll get through this together." Rachel looked up at him, her eyes wide with grief, and whispered, I don't want to be without Mom." Gavin's expression softened, and he reached back to squeeze her hand reassuringly. "You're not alone, Rachel. You'll never be alone again." Arriving at Gavin's home, the children were greeted with warmth and comfort. Nina had prepared a small room for them with fresh sheets, toys, and familiar objects to ease the transition. Gavin guided them inside, speaking softly. "This is your home now," he said. "You can take your time, explore, and ask any questions you want. We're here for you." Rachel clung to Nina while Peter clutched Gavin's hand, seeking the reassurance he needed. The household, though newly expanded, radiated a sense of stability and love, a safe harbor in the storm of their grief. That evening, as they settled into the new home, Gavin sat quietly in the living room, reflecting on the suddenness of tragedy. Life could change in an instant, and he realized the weight of the responsibility he had assumed. But as he looked at Rachel and Peter sleeping peacefully in their new rooms, he felt a quiet resolve. He would protect them, guide them, and nurture them, just as Jordan had done for him and Nina. Their grief would not be erased, but they would have a family to lean on, a place to heal. Jordan lingered briefly before leaving, his hand resting on Gavin's shoulder. "Thank you," he said quietly, his eyes red from tears. "I can't imagine a better place for them. You'll give them the love and guidance I can't right now." Gavin nodded solemnly. "We'll do our best, Jordan. That's all anyone can do." As Jordan drove away, a silence settled over the house, filled with both sorrow and the quiet hope that, despite the tragedy, a new chapter of care, family, and resilience was beginning. That night, as Rachel and Peter lay in their new beds, holding on to each other, they whispered softly about their mother. "I miss Mom," Peter said, his voice trembling. Rachel squeezed his hand. "I know, me too. But we're together, and we'll be okay. We have Gavin and Nina, and we have each other." The warmth of their bond, even in grief, provided a glimmer of comfort, a reminder that family could extend beyond loss. And so, life shifted for the Evans family. Laura's absence left an unfillable void, but it also strengthened the ties among those who remained. Rachel and Peter, now under the care of Gavin and Nina, began the difficult process of navigating their grief, finding solace in a home filled with love, structure, and unwavering support. Though tragedy had struck with cruel suddenness, the bonds of family endured, ready to face the challenges of the days ahead together. The Evans household had gradually settled into a rhythm after the turbulence of loss. Rachel and Peter had grown accustomed to their new environment, finding comfort in the love and guidance of Gavin and Nina. Though grief still lingered like a shadow, the family had begun to rediscover the warmth and laughter that had been missing. Among these changes, Gavin quietly nurtured a feeling he had long harbored, his deep, unspoken love for Rachel. From the moment she had entered his life as a child, he had been drawn to her kindness, intelligence, and resilience. And now, seeing her grow into the remarkable young woman she had become, he knew it was time to act. One crisp autumn evening, Gavin invited Rachel to the small garden behind the house. Lanterns hung from the trees, casting a warm golden glow over the neatly trimmed hedges. The scent of jasmine and fresh earth mingled in the air, creating a quiet sanctuary away from the hum of the city. "Rachel, I wanted to talk to you," Gavin began, his voice steady yet tinged with emotion. Rachel, curious, tilted her head and smiled. "What's this about, Gavin? You've been acting mysterious all evening." Gavin led her to a small wooden bench, the lantern light illuminating his thoughtful expression.
"Rachel, we've shared a lot over the years," he said softly, his hands resting lightly on his knees. "I've watched you grow, laughed with you, and seen you face challenges with strength and grace. And through it all, I've realized something important." Rachel's smile faded slightly, sensing the seriousness in his tone. "Something important?" she echoed, her voice gentle, tinged with curiosity. Gavin took a deep breath, meeting her eyes with an intensity that made her heart flutter. "I've loved you for as long as I can remember," he admitted, his voice unwavering. "Not just as my foster sister, not just as a friend, but as something deeper, something I can't ignore anymore. Rachel, you're the most important person in my life, and I don't want to spend another day without telling you how I feel." Rachel's eyes widened, a mixture of surprise and warmth spreading across her face. She had always cared for Gavin deeply, feeling a unique connection that transcended words, yet she hadn't expected him to express it so openly. Gavin reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "Rachel Evans," he said, his voice steady despite the emotions racing within him, "will you marry me?" The world seemed to pause around them, the rustling leaves, the distant city noise, the gentle hum of the evening, all fading into a soft, expectant silence. Rachel's hands flew to her mouth, her breath catching in her throat. For a long moment, she could only stare at him, her heart pounding, her mind racing with disbelief and joy. Finally, tears glimmering in her eyes, Rachel whispered, "Yes, yes, Gavin, I will marry you." Gavin's face broke into a broad smile, and he slid the ring onto her finger, a perfect fit. Rachel looked down at the delicate band, her emotions overflowing. "I can't believe this is real," she said softly, turning to him. "I've always cared for you. I just didn't know if you felt the same way." Gavin's hand came up to gently cradle her face. "I have, always. And now we can begin a new chapter together." The evening seemed to glow brighter, as if the universe itself was celebrating with them. They sat together on the bench, holding hands, talking about the future, and laughing softly at shared memories. "Do you remember when we first met Sam?" Rachel asked, her eyes sparkling with amusement. Gavin chuckled, squeezing her hand. "How could I forget? You were determined to take care of him, and you've never stopped caring for the people you love. That's one of the things I admire most about you." Rachel blushed, leaning her head against his shoulder. "You've always been there too, Gavin, more than anyone else. I guess I've been waiting for this, even without knowing it." As the days passed, the engagement brought a sense of joy and anticipation to the household. Gavin and Rachel spent their time planning small celebrations with Nina, Peter, and the rest of the family, discussing wedding details and imagining the life they would build together. The bond between them, long rooted in friendship and mutual respect, deepened into a profound love that seemed unbreakable. Each glance, each touch, carried the weight of years spent caring for one another, of quiet sacrifices and unspoken devotion. One afternoon, while walking through a local park, Rachel turned to Gavin, her expression thoughtful. "Gavin, I know life hasn't always been easy for us," she said softly. "We've faced a lot of hardships, losses, and challenges, but I feel like, with you, I can finally breathe, finally feel safe." Gavin looked down at her, his heart swelling with emotion. "That's exactly how I feel, Rachel. You're my home, my anchor, and my future. Together, we can face anything life throws at us." Peter, sensing the happiness in the air, ran up to them, holding a small flower he had picked from the park. "For Rachel, so she has something pretty for the wedding," he exclaimed, his bright smile infectious. Rachel knelt to hug him, laughing softly. "Thank you, Peter. It's perfect." Gavin watched the interaction, feeling a profound sense of contentment. Their family, shaped by love, loss, and resilience, was stronger than ever. He realized that their bond wasn't just about romance, it was about building a life rooted in trust, care, and mutual support.
That evening, back at home, Gavin and Rachel sat by the fireplace, the warm glow illuminating their faces. "I can't wait for the future," Rachel whispered, resting her head on his shoulder. "To a life full of love, laughter, and all the memories we've yet to make." Gavin kissed her forehead gently. "And we'll make them all together. No matter what comes, we'll face it side by side." In that moment, surrounded by family, warmth, and a quiet assurance of unwavering love, both felt that a new chapter had truly begun. A chapter filled with hope, joy, and the promise of a lifetime together. As night fell, the lanterns outside twinkled like stars, echoing the excitement and serenity inside the Evans household. Rachel and Gavin knew that challenges would come, as they always did, but their hearts were intertwined in a way that made them unshakable. Their engagement was not just a promise of marriage, it was a testament to the strength of love that had grown slowly, patiently, and with unwavering devotion. And for the first time in years, they could look forward to the future with hope, knowing that together they could overcome anything. The love that had quietly lingered since childhood was now openly embraced, celebrated, and cherished. In the heart of Boston, amid the laughter of children and the quiet strength of family, a love long nurtured had finally been kindled into a beautiful, enduring flame.
The excitement of Rachel's upcoming wedding filled the Evans household, but beneath the festive preparations lay a subtle undercurrent of tension. Rachel had been meticulously planning every detail, determined to ensure that her special day would reflect not only her love for Gavin, but also the importance of family and the people who had shaped her life. Among those she most wanted to invite was Sam, her childhood friend who would become a famous pop singer. His presence had always been a source of comfort and joy, and Rachel knew it would mean the world to both of them to share this milestone together. With a bright smile and a spring in her step, Rachel picked up the phone to call Sam. "Hey Sam, I hope you're doing well. I wanted to ask if you'd come to the wedding," she said, her voice warm and lively. There was a long pause on the other end, followed by a faint, strained sound. "Rachel, it's me," Sam managed to croak. His voice was barely audible, raspy and weak. Rachel's brow furrowed in concern. "Sam, what happened? Are you okay?" she asked, worry threading through her tone. Sam explained in halting words that he had been in a car accident a few days ago. Though he had escaped serious injury, the accident had temporarily affected his vocal cords, leaving him unable to speak normally. Rachel's heart sank. "Oh my God, Sam, I'm so glad you're alive. Don't worry about the wedding. I just want you to get better," she said gently, her mind racing with concern. Sam's faint smile was almost visible, even over the phone, conveying his gratitude. "Thank you, Rachel," he whispered, before the call ended abruptly. Rachel spent the next few days preoccupied with worry, unable to focus entirely on wedding preparations. She sent messages of support, checked in frequently, and arranged for Sam's medical needs to be addressed, all while juggling the myriad details of the impending nuptials. Finally, the day came when she could see Sam in person, and the anticipation made her heart race. Jordan had arranged for a private visit at a nearby studio where Sam was recuperating. When Rachel stepped into the studio, she froze for a moment. There he was, Sam, leaning lightly against a piano, pale but smiling. His eyes lit up as they met hers, and for a brief instant, the world outside seemed to disappear. Rachel's breath caught. "Sam," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. Sam nodded, managing a small gesture of recognition in lieu of speech. The years of separation melted away in that moment, replaced by the familiarity and depth of their enduring bond. "Rachel, it's really you," she said, stepping closer. Her heart was pounding, but words seemed inadequate to convey the flood of emotions she felt. Sam's eyes shone with gratitude and warmth, and he reached out, his hand brushing lightly against hers. The contact, simple yet profound, stirred a deep, almost forgotten part of her heart. For a few moments, she was transported back to their childhood, to the days they had spent laughing, sharing secrets, and dreaming together.
As they sat together on the studio couch, Rachel was captivated by Sam's presence. He gestured toward a notebook and began scribbling, explaining his thoughts and feelings with careful gestures, as if each motion was meant to bridge the gap left by his temporary loss of voice. Rachel laughed softly at his exaggerated expressions, a sound of pure joy that made Sam's eyes twinkle with recognition. "I've missed this, missed you," Rachel whispered, the words slipping out almost without thought. Sam's hand found hers again, squeezing gently. No words were needed, the connection between them was undeniable. Meanwhile, Gavin had been helping with final wedding preparations at the Evans home. Seeing Rachel leave to visit Sam hadn't seemed unusual at first. After all, Sam had always been a part of their lives. But when Rachel returned later than expected, glowing and distracted in a way he hadn't seen for weeks, Gavin's chest tightened. There was something in the way she spoke about Sam, the way her eyes lingered on his image, that stirred a gnawing unease in him. A pit of jealousy grew silently, insidiously within him.
Later that evening, Rachel recounted her visit to Gavin, her excitement spilling over uncontrollably. "Gavin, you wouldn't believe it. Sam is okay, well, sort of, but he's amazing as always. I can't describe how happy it made me to see him again. It felt like no time had passed at all," she exclaimed, her eyes shining. Gavin nodded politely, though his heart was heavy. "I'm glad you had a good visit, Rachel," he said carefully, his voice steady but tinged with an emotion he couldn't entirely hide. Rachel, unaware of the subtle tension, continued animatedly. "He's still writing songs, and he's just so inspiring. Seeing him again made me realize how much he's grown. I couldn't stop smiling the whole time." Gavin's fingers tightened around his coffee cup, his jaw set. A strange, gnawing feeling twisted in his chest. "You seem very captivated," he said carefully, trying to mask his unease. Rachel laughed, not sensing the depth of his discomfort. "I guess I was, but it's nothing serious. It's just old memories and seeing him happy, that's all." But Gavin couldn't shake the image of Sam sitting close to Rachel, the way their hands had met, the laughter that had sounded like music only for them. That image replayed in his mind, intensifying his insecurities. "You seem very captivated," he said carefully, trying to mask his unease. Rachel laughed, not sensing the depth of his discomfort. "I guess I was, but it's nothing serious. It's just old memories and seeing him happy, that's all." But Gavin couldn't shake the image of Sam sitting close to Rachel, the way their hands had met, the laughter that had sounded like music only for them. That image replayed in his mind, intensifying his insecurities. He had loved Rachel for years, quietly, steadfastly, and yet here was someone from her past, a person who had played a pivotal role in her life, stirring feelings in her that Gavin hadn't anticipated. His mind raced with questions he didn't want to ask, doubts he didn't want to entertain. That night, Gavin found himself staring at the ceiling in his bedroom, wrestling with emotions he had long kept buried. He loved Rachel deeply, but the intensity of her connection with Sam unsettled him. He remembered the years he had spent protecting, guiding, and caring for her, and yet the sight of her enchanted by Sam's presence left a gnawing ache of inadequacy. He realized that his love for Rachel was intertwined with a fear of losing her, of not being enough, of being overshadowed by a bond he couldn't fully compete with. Meanwhile, Rachel, oblivious to Gavin's inner turmoil, returned to the studio the next day, determined to check on Sam's recovery. Sitting with him again, helping him with his scribbles and sharing quiet laughter, she felt a rush of affection and nostalgia that overwhelmed her senses. For a fleeting moment, she forgot about her upcoming wedding, the commitments she had made, and the future she had planned with Gavin. All that existed in that instant was Sam, the boy who had been her friend, her confidant, and her steadfast support. It was only later, when Gavin came to pick her up, that reality intruded. He watched them as they said goodbye, her hand lingering briefly in Sam's before she turned to him. Gavin's face was unreadable, but inside, a storm brewed. He wanted to trust Rachel, to believe in her love, yet the vision of her enthralled by Sam was a seed of insecurity that refused to be ignored. "Are you okay?" Rachel asked, noticing the slight tension in his posture. Gavin forced a calm smile. "I'm fine, Rachel. Let's go home." As they drove back, silence filled the car. Rachel, still excited from the visit, tried to recount moments, but Gavin only nodded occasionally, his thoughts consumed by what he had witnessed. The unexpected reunion had brought joy to Rachel's heart, but had simultaneously ignited a subtle yet potent conflict within Gavin, an insecurity that neither time nor love could immediately soothe. In the days that followed, the presence of Sam loomed large in Gavin's mind. Though he had no reason to distrust Rachel, the closeness they shared during her visit haunted him. He realized that love, even the strongest kind, could be tested not by betrayal, but by the lingering power of past bonds and the intensity of human emotion. As Rachel busied herself with wedding preparations, Gavin wrestled with the uneasy knowledge that his heart might be challenged in ways he had never anticipated. And so, the stage was set for tension, emotion, and discovery. Rachel's excitement and warmth clashed with Gavin's quiet insecurities, while Sam's presence, innocent yet profoundly stirring, added an unexpected layer of complexity. The wedding approached, but beneath the surface of joy and anticipation, currents of doubt, passion, and unspoken feelings swirled, ready to test the strength of love, loyalty, and trust within the Evans family.
The morning of the wedding dawned bright and clear, with the autumn sun casting a golden hue over the Evans estate. Flowers had been arranged meticulously, the garden sparkling with lanterns and ribbons, and the aroma of fresh blooms mingled with the crisp air. Guests began to arrive, their excited chatter filling the house, while Nina busied herself with last-minute arrangements, ensuring every detail reflected Rachel's dream. Amid the joy and anticipation, a subtle undercurrent of tension hovered, primarily due to the unresolved feelings stirred by Sam's unexpected reunion with Rachel. Rachel stood in her wedding dress, staring at her reflection, her heart fluttering with nervous excitement. The delicate lace hugged her figure, and the soft layers of tulle flowed around her like a whisper. Yet despite the beauty of the day and the support of everyone around her, a lingering thought gnawed at her mind: Sam. His recent accident, their heartfelt reunion, and the intensity of their bond had left her momentarily distracted, pulling her thoughts away from the wedding vows she was about to take. "Rachel, you look beautiful," Nina said softly, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Rachel smiled faintly, trying to summon the excitement she had felt just days ago. Gavin arrived shortly thereafter, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, his expression calm but his eyes betraying a flicker of unease. He had noticed the way Rachel spoke of Sam, the light in her eyes when recounting their moments together, and the subtle glow of admiration that lingered long after she returned home. He reminded himself that Sam was her friend, nothing more, yet the intensity of her emotions left him questioning his place in her heart. "Rachel," he said quietly as he approached, offering a tentative smile, "are you ready?" She turned to him, meeting his gaze, and nodded. "Yes, I think so." The ceremony began beneath the arch of flowers, the sun casting long shadows as family and friends watched with joy and anticipation. Jordan stood at the front, his eyes moist with emotion, while Peter clutched Nina's hand, looking up at Rachel with wide, trusting eyes. As Rachel walked down the aisle, Gavin's heart swelled with love and hope, yet an undercurrent of anxiety persisted. He kept his gaze fixed on her, memorizing every step, every graceful movement, hoping that their shared history and deep bond would carry them through the uncertainties. When they reached the altar, the officiant began the ceremony, speaking of love, commitment, and partnership. Rachel and Gavin exchanged vows they had carefully written,
each word heartfelt. Yet beneath her calm exterior, Rachel's mind wandered briefly to Sam. Memories of their laughter, shared dreams, and the way he had always understood her emotions made her heart ache with gratitude and warmth. She realized that the depth of her affection for her late mother and brother remained unmatched, and though she loved Gavin, it was impossible to ignore the lingering bonds that defined her heart. When it was Gavin's turn to speak his vows, he looked deeply into Rachel's eyes, his voice steady but tinged with emotion. "Rachel, you are my world. From the moment I met you, I knew you were extraordinary. I promise to love you, protect you, and be your partner in all things. You've been my inspiration, my joy, and my reason to believe in enduring love." Rachel smiled softly, touched by his sincerity, yet she felt the weight of her unspoken truth pressing on her chest. The ceremony continued, the music swelled, and they exchanged rings, yet her heart was conflicted. After the formalities, as the officiant pronounced them married, Rachel's emotions reached a tipping point. In a quiet moment, away from the bustling crowd and camera flashes, she turned to Gavin, her voice trembling. "Gavin, there's something I need to tell you," she said softly. Gavin's brow furrowed slightly, sensing the seriousness in her tone. "What is it, Rachel?" he asked, his voice steady, though a hint of apprehension crept in.
Rachel took a deep breath, struggling to find the words. "I love you, Gavin, but I have to be honest. The only people I've ever truly loved are my mother and my brother Peter. You mean so much to me, and I care about you deeply, but my heart, it belongs to them." Her words hung in the air, heavy with truth, and Gavin felt as if the ground had been pulled out from beneath him. The smile he had worn moments ago faltered, and his chest tightened with an ache he had not anticipated. "Rachel," Gavin began, his voice barely above a whisper. His mind reeled with the conflict of emotions, love, heartbreak, confusion, and disbelief all mingling at once. I don't know what to say." Rachel reached out, taking his hand gently. "I don't want to hurt you, Gavin. You've been wonderful to me, and you've loved me with a depth I've always admired. But I can't lie about my feelings. You deserve someone whose heart can fully embrace you, not someone still bound by the love for her family." Gavin swallowed hard, trying to maintain composure as a storm of conflicting emotions threatened to overwhelm him. He had loved Rachel quietly for so long, waited patiently, and hoped that his devotion would be enough to earn her heart. And yet, in this moment, he realized that love alone could not change the realities of her heart's attachments. He squeezed her hand, forcing a small, fragile smile. I understand," he said, his voice steady despite the ache inside. It's a lot to take in. I hoped." Rachel's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "I know, Gavin. I never wanted to hurt you. You've given me so much, care, guidance, love, but I can't pretend to feel something I don't. I hope someday you can forgive me." Gavin looked down, swallowing the lump in his throat. The world felt simultaneously bright and heavy, the day of joy now shadowed by the painful weight of unfulfilled expectations. As they left the altar, guests cheered, oblivious to the tension between the newlyweds. Gavin forced a smile, nodding politely to family and friends, but inside, his emotions churned. He loved Rachel, yet he was confronted with the stark truth of her heart, a truth that left him emotionally conflicted and uncertain about the days to come. Rachel, sensing the pain she had caused, tried to remain composed, but a quiet sorrow lingered in her eyes. She held on to Peter's hand tightly, seeking comfort in the one love that remained constant and unwavering. The reception commenced, filled with music, laughter, and the clinking of glasses. Yet Gavin and Rachel felt like strangers in their own celebration. Each smile, each toast was tinged with an unspoken tension.
Gavin found himself retreating momentarily, gathering his thoughts and attempting to reconcile his love for Rachel with the reality she had revealed. Rachel, for her part, immersed herself in caring for Peter and maintaining the joyous atmosphere, though a quiet ache followed her with every glance at her husband. Later, as the evening wound down and the guests began to depart, Gavin and Rachel found themselves alone in the garden once more. The lanterns flickered softly, casting shadows across the manicured hedges. Gavin took a deep breath, his hand reaching for Rachel's. "Rachel, I love you," he said quietly. "I always have, and I always will. But I also see that your heart is where it's always been. I need to understand what that means for us." Rachel nodded, tears spilling freely now. "I love you, Gavin, but not in the way you deserve. I don't want to hurt you more than I already have." Gavin swallowed hard, nodding slowly. "I'll figure it out. I'll find a way to cope, to understand. But today was supposed to be perfect, and yet—" His voice trailed off, heavy with emotion. Rachel reached out, cupping his face, and whispered, "I wish I could change it, Gavin. I truly do." He closed his eyes briefly, feeling the weight of her words, the ache of love entwined with heartbreak. And so, the first day of their married life unfolded in a complex tapestry of love, grief, loyalty, and emotional conflict. The wedding, outwardly joyful and filled with celebration, had revealed the deeper truths of their hearts. Gavin loved Rachel deeply, yet he was confronted with the limitations of that love. Rachel cared for him, yet her heart remained bound to the memories and attachments of her family. Their journey as a couple had begun, but it would be marked by challenges, introspection, and the slow, uncertain navigation of emotions that had been laid bare on the very first day.
The weeks following the wedding should have been a period of joy and adjustment, a time for Gavin and Rachel to settle into their new life together. Yet, beneath the surface of their home, a quiet unease began to grow. Gavin found himself increasingly conscious of the small details that had never bothered him before. Peter's idle hours, his casual interruptions, and Rachel's frequent calls with Sam. Though Rachel insisted that everything was innocent, Gavin's mind began weaving scenarios he didn't want to imagine but couldn't help picturing. One evening, as Rachel chatted on the phone in the kitchen, Gavin lingered near the doorway, listening in despite himself. The conversation was filled with laughter, affectionate nicknames, and long pauses that suggested intimacy beyond what Gavin was comfortable with. He clenched his fists, forcing himself to step away. "It's nothing," he muttered under his breath, yet the jealousy gnawed at him relentlessly. His love for Rachel was unwavering, but the fear of losing her, of being replaced in her heart, had taken root and begun to dominate his thoughts. Peter, ever aware of Gavin's watchful presence, seemed oblivious to the tension in the house. He lounged on the sofa with a game controller in hand, occasionally glancing at Rachel for attention. "Rachel, can you help me with this?" he called, voice bright and casual. Rachel smiled warmly and went to assist him, kneeling beside the couch to explain the game mechanics. Gavin, watching the scene from the hallway, felt a prickling sensation of unease. He had always been patient with Peter, but now the younger man's dependence on Rachel seemed to exacerbate the growing distance Gavin felt between him and his wife. Later that evening, Gavin and Rachel found themselves alone in the study. Rachel leaned against the desk, animatedly describing her day, while Gavin struggled to maintain composure. "You seem distracted lately," he said cautiously, choosing his words with care. Rachel tilted her head, her eyes curious. "Distracted? Me? Oh, I guess I've been busy with wedding arrangements and checking on Peter, but I'm fine. Why do you ask?" Gavin hesitated, then spoke with a measured tone, trying not to reveal the full extent of his jealousy. "It's just, I notice you talk to Sam a lot, and Peter, he's around more than usual. I guess I'm just trying to understand how it all fits into our new life." Rachel's expression softened and she reached out to touch his arm. "Gavin, I love you. Sam is a friend, nothing more. He's had a rough time lately, and I just want to support him. And Peter, well, he's my brother. He needs guidance, and you know that I can't ignore him. But none of this changes how I feel about you." Gavin nodded, attempting to absorb her words, yet the uneasy feeling persisted. Love alone seemed insufficient to quell the gnawing anxiety that had begun to take root in his mind. The following days only intensified Gavin's apprehension. Rachel's frequent calls to Sam became a source of silent frustration. Even when she turned her attention to him, Gavin's imagination conjured images of laughter and shared moments that he could neither see nor verify. One afternoon, he confronted her gently but firmly. "Rachel, I can't help but feel uneasy about Sam. I know you say it's nothing, but sometimes I feel like I'm losing you, even for a moment." Rachel's eyes widened and she reached for his hand. "Gavin, don't ever think that. Sam is my friend, but you are my husband, my partner, the one I love. Please trust me." Gavin nodded, attempting to absorb her words, yet the uneasy feeling persisted. Love alone seemed insufficient to quell the gnawing anxiety that had begun to take root in his mind. The following days only intensified Gavin's apprehension. Rachel's frequent calls to Sam became a source of silent frustration. Even when she turned her attention to him, Gavin's imagination conjured images of laughter and shared moments that he could neither see nor verify. One afternoon, he confronted her gently but firmly. "Rachel, I can't help but feel uneasy about Sam. I know you say it's nothing, but sometimes I feel like I'm losing you, even for a moment." Rachel's eyes widened and she reached for his hand. "Gavin, don't ever think that. Sam is my friend, but you are my husband, my partner, the one I love. Please trust me." Despite her reassurances, Gavin found himself unable to silence the doubts. Each interaction between Rachel and Sam, whether in person or over the phone, seemed to confirm his insecurities. He replayed the moments of her reunion with Sam in his mind, the gentle touch of hands, the laughter that had sounded so intimate, and the memory made his chest tighten with a mix of love and jealousy. The rational part of his mind knew that his fears were unfounded, but the emotional part refused to yield.
Peter, meanwhile, remained an unintentional source of tension. He had been given an allowance and was expected to find work, but his days were often spent idly, pursuing hobbies or lingering in the house. One evening, Gavin found him fiddling with a small motorcycle Peter had recently purchased, apparently without consulting anyone. "Peter," Gavin said, his voice firm, "you need to be responsible. You can't just spend money without thinking about the consequences. And you need to focus on finding a job, not just hanging around." Peter shrugged, deflecting Gavin's concerns. "Relax, Gavin. I'll figure it out. It's just a motorcycle. No big deal." Gavin sighed, frustration building. He had always been patient and understanding, but now every small transgression felt like a personal affront. The combination of Peter's casual defiance and Rachel's deep emotional ties with Sam created a storm in Gavin's mind that he could not easily control. His insecurities, once dormant, now shaped his perception of every action, conversation, and interaction in the household. Rachel, sensing Gavin's growing unease, tried to address it directly. "Gavin, please don't let your mind wander to places it shouldn't. Sam is my friend, Peter is my brother, and you are my husband. That hasn't changed," she said, her tone earnest and pleading. Gavin met her gaze, struggling to reconcile his love for her with the gnawing fear that he was somehow inadequate. "I know, Rachel, I know," he murmured, "but I can't help feeling unsettled. It's like I'm constantly watching, waiting for something I can't see." The tension reached a peak one evening when Rachel received a call from Sam inviting her to a casual rehearsal session at his studio. She hesitated, knowing that Gavin would be uncomfortable with the idea, but she also wanted to support Sam. Gavin, who had overheard part of the conversation, stepped into the room, his expression serious.
"Rachel, you're going to Sam's rehearsal? Now?" he asked, his voice betraying a mix of anger and hurt. Rachel turned to him, surprised by the intensity of his reaction. "Yes, Gavin. He asked me to help with some ideas. It's just a few hours, nothing more. Please understand." Gavin's jaw tightened, the familiar storm of jealousy rising unchecked. "I understand that he's a friend, but sometimes it feels like your priorities aren't with me, like you're more concerned with him than with your husband," he admitted, the words slipping out despite his best efforts. Rachel's eyes filled with tears, and she shook her head. "Gavin, that's not true. You are my husband, my partner. I love you. But Sam, he's been part of my life for so long. I can't just ignore him." The conversation ended with an uneasy silence, each of them retreating to their respective spaces, hearts heavy with unspoken emotions. Gavin paced the study, running a hand through his hair, trying to calm the storm inside him. He knew he needed to trust Rachel, but the combination of Sam's presence and Peter's dependency created a whirlwind of doubt he couldn't simply dismiss. Meanwhile, Rachel sat quietly in the living room, feeling the weight of her husband's jealousy, yet frustrated by his inability to see the pure intentions behind her actions. In the days that followed, Gavin's jealousy subtly dictated his interactions with the family. He watched Peter more closely, questioned Rachel's calls to Sam, and found himself mentally replaying every moment of their reunion. Rachel, though patient and understanding, could feel the growing distance between them. She knew that communication and reassurance would be crucial to navigate this turbulent period, yet she also recognized that Gavin's insecurities were deeply rooted, requiring time and trust to resolve. As night fell, the Evans household was quiet, yet beneath the surface, emotions churned. Gavin's love for Rachel remained steadfast, yet the jealousy he couldn't control threatened to cast a shadow over their marriage. Rachel's affection for her husband and loyalty to her lifelong friend created a delicate balance, one that would be tested in the days to come. The stage was set for a confrontation with their feelings, a journey through trust, doubt, and the ultimate understanding of love's complexities.
The idea of a vacation had seemed simple enough to Gavin, just a few days in Napa Valley, away from the distractions of the city, to focus solely on Rachel and rebuild the intimacy they both deserved after the tension-filled weeks following their wedding. He imagined quiet mornings with her, leisurely strolls through the vineyards, and evenings spent savoring local cuisine beneath the fading sunlight. He hoped this getaway would serve as a balm for the lingering insecurities that had begun to cloud his love for Rachel. "I can't wait, Rachel," Gavin said one evening as they packed their bags. "Just you and me, no distractions, no responsibilities, a chance to reconnect." Rachel smiled warmly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I'm looking forward to too, Gavin. A little escape sounds perfect." The excitement in Gavin's voice, however, belied a subtle undercurrent of anxiety. He couldn't entirely dismiss the lingering tension from Sam's recent reunion with Rachel, nor the subtle way Peter's presence had kept Rachel emotionally stretched in the past weeks. The flight to Napa Valley was uneventful, and upon arrival, the rolling hills, golden vineyards, and soft autumn breeze seemed to promise a reprieve from the emotional storms that had plagued them. Gavin and Rachel settled into a charming bed and breakfast nestled among the vines, the quaint architecture and warm hospitality offering a welcome contrast to their bustling Boston life. For a brief moment, Gavin felt his heart lighten, allowing himself to hope that this trip might help bridge the invisible gap that had grown between him and Rachel. On the second morning of their stay, as they enjoyed breakfast on the terrace overlooking the vineyard, Rachel's phone buzzed insistently. She checked it and frowned slightly. "It's Sam," she said, reading the message. "He has a business meeting here in Napa Valley, and he wants me to accompany him to discuss some promotional ideas. It's just a professional thing, Gavin, nothing more." Gavin's fork paused mid-air, his stomach twisting into a knot. The casual tone in her voice did little to soothe the rising unease he felt. "Professional or not, he's here with us at the same time we're supposed to have this vacation?" he asked, forcing calm into his voice. Rachel reached across the table, placing a hand over his. "Gavin, I promise you, it's harmless. He's just a friend, and this is part of his work. I didn't plan this, it just happened. Please trust me." Gavin looked at her, his eyes searching for reassurance, but the gnawing feeling of jealousy and insecurity refused to be silenced. "I want to trust you, Rachel, I really do, but sometimes it's hard not to feel like he's intruding on what should be our time together," he admitted quietly. Rachel sighed softly, understanding his feelings, even as she felt the innocent nature of the situation. "I get it, Gavin, I really do, but you have to know my heart belongs to you." Later that day, Rachel met Sam at a local vineyard where his meeting had been scheduled. Gavin followed at a distance, ostensibly to help with directions, but in reality, he couldn't resist observing the interactions. As Rachel and Sam spoke animatedly about campaign ideas, Gavin's jealousy flared. He noted the easy laughter, the subtle gestures, and the familiarity that had always existed between them. In that moment, the gnawing thought that Sam might somehow be competing for Rachel's attention became overwhelming, and Gavin's mind replayed every memory of their past interactions with an intensity that made his chest tighten. Rachel, oblivious to Gavin's internal struggle, continued her discussions with Sam. "I think this idea could really resonate with your fans," she said, pointing to a concept on the screen. Sam nodded, his eyes gleaming with enthusiasm. "Absolutely, Rachel. You always have the best insights. I don't know what I'd do without you." Gavin's fists clenched involuntarily. Though he knew rationally that Sam's words were professional and benign, the emotional impact of seeing them together, so effortlessly connected, was almost too much to bear. As the meeting concluded, Rachel and Sam walked together toward the car, discussing logistics and follow-up plans. Gavin lingered behind, heart hammering in his chest. When Rachel finally turned to him, smiling brightly, he forced a smile in return, but it was strained, artificial, lacking the warmth that should have accompanied it. "Everything okay?" she asked, sensing the tension radiating from him. Gavin nodded, though his mind was racing. "Yes, everything's fine," he replied, though even he recognized the fragility of that statement. The rest of the afternoon did little to ease Gavin's anxiety. Rachel tried to include him in discussions, explaining the professional aspects of Sam's project, but Gavin's thoughts were consumed with the subtle closeness he had witnessed. Even when they returned to their bed and breakfast, Gavin remained distant, absorbed in a swirl of jealousy, insecurity, and frustration. He wanted to confront Rachel about his feelings, but feared that doing so might come across as possessive or controlling. Yet staying silent only amplified the emotional storm within him. During dinner, Gavin attempted to regain composure, focusing on the food and the serene landscape visible through the window. Rachel, still excited from the day's events, tried to share anecdotes about Sam's innovative ideas and his enthusiastic approach to work. "He's really passionate about this project," she said, her eyes bright. "It's inspiring to see someone so dedicated. I just wanted to help him think through the details." Gavin listened, nodding, but every word she spoke seemed to deepen the wound of his jealousy. The ease with which Rachel interacted with Sam made him feel like an outsider in his own marriage, a spectator to a bond he couldn't touch or understand. Later that night, Gavin confronted his emotions privately, pacing their room in frustration. "Why can't I just trust her?" he muttered to himself, his voice tinged with self-reproach. "I love her. I know she loves me. But every time Sam is around, I feel threatened. It's ridiculous, and yet I can't stop feeling it." Rachel, sitting quietly on the bed, watched him with concern. "Gavin," she said gently, "you need to talk to me. I can't help if you bottle it all up. I want us to enjoy this trip, but I need you to trust me." Gavin stopped pacing, looking down at her. "I know, Rachel. I know you're honest and faithful, but seeing you with him, it just triggers something in me. I can't explain it, but it feels like a threat to what we have. I don't want to lose you, not even for a moment." Rachel reached out, taking his hands in hers. "Gavin, you're not going to lose me. Sam is just a part of my past and my support system, but my present and future, that's with you, always with you."
Her words, tender and sincere, helped soothe some of the storm in Gavin's heart, though he knew that fully overcoming his insecurities would take time and effort. By the end of the day, Gavin and Rachel retreated to the terrace, sitting together under the starlit sky. The gentle breeze carried the faint scent of the vineyards, and for a brief moment, the tension between them eased. Gavin rested his head against Rachel's shoulder, letting her warmth anchor him. "I'll try," he whispered. "I'll try to trust you, to let go of the fear. I love you too much to let anything come between us." Rachel kissed the top of his head, her heart full of understanding. "I know, Gavin, and I love you too. We'll get through this, together." Though the Napa Valley trip had begun under the shadow of jealousy and unease, it also offered a chance for reflection, communication, and the slow rebuilding of trust. Gavin realized that love, though strong, could be challenged by fear and insecurity, while Rachel understood that her lifelong bonds required careful navigation in the context of marriage. As they sat together, the vineyards stretching endlessly before them, both recognized that the journey ahead would demand patience, understanding, and unwavering commitment.
The morning sunlight streamed through the curtains, casting warm, golden streaks across the Evans household. On most days, the house was a hub of organized chaos, filled with the laughter of children, the chatter of family members, and the occasional bickering that came with living under one roof. But today, a quiet tension hung in the air, thicker than usual, as subtle conflicts began to fester between family members, fueled by past insecurities and unspoken grievances. It all began with money, or, more precisely, the mysterious disappearance of some from Gavin's wallet. Peter had been eyeing a used motorcycle he wanted to buy for weeks. Early that morning, under the guise of borrowing cash for something urgent, he slipped a few bills from Gavin's wallet while he thought no one was watching. Later, he rushed to the bike shop, heart racing with anticipation and guilt, unaware that his actions would trigger a chain of events that would shake the household. Gavin discovered the missing money when he reached for his wallet after breakfast. His brows furrowed, and a sense of irritation immediately welled up inside him. "Peter, where's my money?" he demanded, his voice sharper than intended. Peter, caught off guard, stammered, I needed it for something, important." Gavin's eyes narrowed. "Something important doesn't justify taking money without asking. This isn't a game, Peter." Peter, feeling cornered, hesitated, unsure whether to confess or deny it. Before Peter could answer, Nina walked in, her expression guilty yet hesitant. "Gavin, I need to tell you something," she said softly. "The money Peter took, I actually used it for my college tuition. I didn't want to worry anyone, and I thought I could manage it without causing a fuss." Gavin's tension momentarily shifted from anger toward Peter to shock at Nina's revelation. "Nina, why didn't you just ask? You could have explained, and we would have supported you," he said, his voice a mixture of frustration and concern. Nina shrugged, guilt evident in her eyes. "I didn't want to add more stress. I thought I could handle it myself." Peter, feeling both guilty and humiliated, avoided Gavin's gaze. I shouldn't have taken the money," he admitted reluctantly. "I didn't know Nina needed it. I just wanted the motorcycle." Gavin sighed, running a hand through his hair, trying to contain his frustration. "Peter, this isn't about the motorcycle. It's about trust. You can't just take things without permission. If you had asked, this could have been avoided." Peter nodded, shame written across his face, while Nina gave a small, apologetic smile. The situation, though resolved, had sown seeds of tension, highlighting the delicate balance within the household. Later that afternoon, another incident escalated the stress within the home. Rachel and Nina had been tackling household chores together while Peter tried to occupy himself with video games upstairs. In the midst of cleaning, Peter accidentally wandered into the bathroom, unaware that Nina was inside. The sudden and unexpected encounter shocked both of them. "Peter, get out!" Nina exclaimed, her voice a mix of embarrassment and anger. Peter froze, stunned by the situation. I didn't know," he stammered.
Gavin, who had been walking by, heard the commotion and immediately entered the room, his face flushed with anger. "Peter, how many times do I have to tell you to respect boundaries? That's completely unacceptable." His tone was sharp, bordering on furious. Peter's eyes widened, fear and remorse mingling in his expression. I didn't mean to," he tried to explain, but Gavin's frustration boiled over. "I don't want to hear excuses. Pack your things and leave the house for a while. You need to understand the consequences of your actions." Peter, feeling rejected and ashamed, obeyed silently, gathering his belongings as tears pricked his eyes. With Peter out of the house, the atmosphere in the Evans home became heavy with unresolved tension. Rachel, seeing the emotional strain on both Gavin and her brother, sought comfort in someone she had always trusted, Sam. She called him immediately, her voice quivering. "Sam, I just don't know what to do. Everything is falling apart here, and he's so angry." Sam, calm and reassuring, responded with warmth. "Rachel, take a deep breath. You're not alone. I'm here for you. Whatever happens, we'll figure it out." His words, gentle and sincere, provided Rachel with the support she desperately needed, yet they also fanned the flames of Gavin's insecurities. Unbeknownst to Rachel, Gavin had overheard a portion of her conversation with Sam from the hallway. The ease and intimacy in their exchange, combined with the recent household incidents, pushed his jealousy to a peak. He had always trusted Rachel, but seeing her turn to Sam in moments of vulnerability created a deep sense of insecurity he could not ignore. "Is she leaning on him more than she leans on me?" he thought bitterly. "Does she value him more in these moments than her husband?" The questions tormented him, churning into a mixture of anger and despair. Later that evening, Rachel returned to the living room, trying to maintain a sense of normalcy. She found Gavin sitting in silence, staring into the distance. "Gavin, are you okay?" she asked cautiously, aware of his growing tension. Gavin looked up, his expression conflicted. I don't know, Rachel. I feel pushed aside, like I'm losing my place in this family. Peter, Mina, and now Sam. I feel like there's no room for me anymore." Rachel knelt beside him, her hands gently on his shoulders. "Gavin, you are the most important person in my life. You always have been. Yes, Peter and Nina need guidance, and yes, Sam is a friend, but none of that diminishes my love for you." Gavin's lips pressed into a thin line, the storm inside him still raging. "I know you say that. I want to believe it. But every time I see you with Sam, or Peter, or even Nina depending on you, I feel helpless. I can't shake the feeling that I'm being replaced, even if I logically know it's not true." Rachel's eyes glistened with tears as she embraced him. "Gavin, listen to me. You are irreplaceable. I need you and I love you. But you have to trust me. My love for you isn't diminished by anyone else. You're my husband, my partner, and my heart belongs to you, always." Despite her reassurances, the tension lingered like a shadow over their evening. Gavin, though comforted by Rachel's words, realized that his insecurities were deep-rooted, fueled by his desire to protect the family and maintain his role within it. Rachel, in turn, recognized that open communication and patience would be crucial to navigate these turbulent times. They both understood that love alone was not enough. Trust, understanding, and empathy were equally important to sustaining their relationship amidst the challenges posed by household conflicts and past loyalties. As night fell, the Evans household finally quieted, the earlier chaos leaving behind a somber stillness. Gavin and Rachel sat together in the dim light, holding hands and silently reflecting on the day's events. Both knew that these incidents, while stressful, offered an opportunity for growth, not just for Peter and Nina, but for their marriage as well. The trials of the day underscored the fragility and resilience of family bonds, the delicate balance of love, and the importance of facing insecurities head-on rather than letting them fester.
By the time they retired for the night, a tentative sense of calm had returned. Gavin and Rachel, though still weighed down by the events of the day, were united in their understanding that navigating these challenges required patience, trust, and unwavering commitment. The conflicts had tested their limits, yet they also highlighted the strength of their bond, the depth of their love, and the necessity of communication in overcoming jealousy, misunderstandings, and the complexities of family life.
The Evans household had grown tense over the past few weeks, a simmering pressure that seemed ready to explode at any moment. Gavin had tried to maintain composure, convincing himself that his jealousy was unfounded and that Rachel's intentions were pure. Yet, the more he observed her interactions with Sam and witnessed the dynamics with Peter and Nina, the harder it became to suppress the storm brewing inside him. The subtle smiles, the laughter, and the ease with which Rachel engaged with Sam weighed heavily on him, festering into obsession. That night, Gavin's restlessness prevented him from sleeping. He tossed and turned, the images of Rachel and Sam playing together in his mind with exaggerated intimacy. Eventually, exhaustion claimed him, and he slipped into a restless sleep. In his dreams, he saw Rachel and Sam performing together on a stage, her laughter echoing in perfect harmony with his voice. The scene felt unreal yet painfully vivid. Gavin's mind twisted the situation, turning innocent smiles into secret glances and friendly gestures into hidden affection. When he woke, his chest ached and a cold fury gripped him. Morning brought no relief. Gavin sat rigidly at the breakfast table, his eyes dark and restless, while Rachel chatted cheerfully about mundane household plans and Peter's school schedule. Her lightheartedness, which once brought him comfort, now felt like a provocation. "Rachel," he said, voice low but trembling with tension, "we need to talk." Rachel looked at him, sensing the gravity in his tone. "Of course, Gavin. What's wrong?" She had no idea how deeply his emotions had twisted overnight. Gavin's hands shook slightly as he struggled to articulate his feelings. I can't ignore this anymore. Every time I see you with Sam, every time I hear about him, it feels like you care for him more than for me. I see the way you laugh at his jokes, the way you listen to him, and I can't stand it." Rachel's eyes widened in shock. "Gavin, that's not true. You know how I feel about you. Sam is a friend, nothing more. Why are you letting jealousy control you?" "I don't know," Gavin shouted, his voice cracking with raw emotion. "I can't control it. I thought I could, but I can't. I feel like I'm losing you, Rachel, and I can't bear it." His face flushed red with fury and anguish. Rachel reached out, attempting to calm him. "Gavin, please don't do this. You're letting fear and suspicion cloud your judgment. I love you. You are my husband." But Gavin's mind, already clouded by the vivid imagery of his dream, refused to hear reason. He saw betrayal where there was none, closeness where there was only friendship. I can't do this anymore," he said, his voice hollow with despair. Without another word, he stood abruptly, pointing toward the door. "Get out. I can't have you here right now. I can't look at you." Rachel's mouth fell open in shock. "Gavin, wait. Please don't say that." But Gavin was beyond reason. Every fiber of his being felt torn, every heartbeat pounding with the illusion of betrayal. Rachel, stunned and heartbroken, realized there was no immediate way to reach him. "Gavin, please," she pleaded, her voice barely above a whisper. Tears filled her eyes as she turned to leave the house, feeling the cold weight of rejection and despair settle over her. She clutched her coat tightly around her, stepping into the street with nothing but her sorrow and confusion to accompany her. For Rachel, the world seemed to collapse in that moment. The home that had always been a sanctuary now felt like a prison, a place where love had been rejected and trust shattered. She wandered the streets aimlessly, the city around her blurring into insignificance. Memories of happier times with Gavin, smiles, quiet conversations, shared meals, played like cruel illusions in her mind. Each recollection was pierced by the sting of his accusations, and the reality of her isolation seemed almost unbearable. As evening approached, Rachel's despair deepened. She found herself on a deserted bridge overlooking the river, the sound of flowing water echoing in the empty air. She clutched the railing, staring down at the dark ripples below. The thought of ending her suffering, of escaping the heartbreak and the sense of hopelessness whispered in her mind. I can't face this pain anymore," she murmured to herself, her voice trembling. The weight of rejection, combined with the relentless sense of guilt and helplessness, pressed upon her chest like a physical force. Yet, even in her darkest moment, a sliver of clarity remained. Rachel thought of Sam and the unwavering support he had offered her over the years. She remembered the countless times he had listened without judgment, had provided comfort when the world seemed too heavy, and had always encouraged her to keep going. Her heart ached for Gavin too, realizing that despite his actions, his anger and jealousy stemmed from love, albeit twisted and misunderstood. The thought of hurting herself while Gavin still loved her was unbearable. Meanwhile, back at the house, Gavin sat alone in the dim light of the living room, the silence amplifying his inner turmoil. His anger had dissipated slightly, replaced by guilt, fear, and confusion. "What have I done?" he whispered to himself, burying his face in his hands. The harsh reality of his actions, throwing Rachel out, accusing her of betrayal, and letting jealousy dictate his behavior, began to settle on him like a heavy weight. He realized he had pushed the one person he loved most to the brink of despair, and the thought of losing her permanently was almost too much to bear. As the night deepened, Rachel, still trembling on the bridge, made a quiet decision. She couldn't let despair define her actions. She had to find a way to survive, to understand what had happened, and to confront the situation with clarity. With shaky legs and tear-streaked cheeks, she slowly turned away from the edge, taking a few tentative steps back toward safety. The city lights in the distance seemed dim and distant, yet they were a reminder that life continued, even amidst heartbreak. Somewhere between guilt, fear, and love, the threads of their story were fraying, but they had not yet broken completely. Gavin's jealousy and Rachel's despair had reached a breaking point, but the underlying bond between them, forged through years of shared history, love, and trust, remained intact. The stage was set for the next chapter of confrontation, realization, and eventual reconciliation. Though the darkness had enveloped them both tonight, the potential for light and understanding lingered, waiting for the right moment to emerge. As Rachel slowly made her way back toward the neighborhood, her mind swirled with thoughts of Sam, Peter, Nina, and most of all, Gavin. She knew that this was only a temporary separation, a painful pause in their shared journey. Somewhere, deep within, she clung to the hope that Gavin would see the truth of her love, just as she held on to the knowledge that her life, fragile and wounded as it felt now, was worth fighting for.
The day of Rachel's birthday arrived with an unusual sense of anticipation in the air. Sam, ever thoughtful and considerate, had gone to great lengths to host a celebration that would lift Rachel's spirits after the tumultuous weeks she had endured. Friends, family, and close acquaintances gathered at a beautifully decorated venue, laughter and music filling the space with warmth and joy. Rachel, unaware of the deeper tension brewing beneath the surface, smiled brightly as she greeted everyone. "Sam, this is incredible," Rachel said, her eyes wide with gratitude. "I didn't expect you to go to so much trouble for me." Sam chuckled softly, brushing a stray strand of hair from her face. "You deserve it, Rachel. After everything you've been through lately, I just wanted today to be about you. No stress, no worries, just happiness." Rachel's smile deepened, feeling the genuine care in his words. But even in this moment of lighthearted celebration, a shadow of unease lingered nearby.
Gavin had been invited to the party, but he entered the venue with a heart heavy with suspicion and anger. The sight of Sam laughing and chatting casually with Rachel, their easy camaraderie, sent his jealousy into overdrive. Every friendly gesture, every shared laugh felt to him like a provocation, a confirmation of the fears he had struggled to suppress. He forced himself to maintain a neutral expression, but inside his emotions churned violently. "I can't let this continue," he muttered under his breath, his grip tightening on the small handgun concealed beneath his jacket. As the party carried on, Gavin's unease escalated. When the moment felt right, he pulled Sam aside under the pretense of discussing logistics. Once they were out of earshot, in a quiet hallway near the exit, Gavin turned to face Sam, his eyes dark with fury. "Enough games," he growled, pulling the gun from beneath his jacket. "I know what's going on between you and Rachel. I won't stand by while you take her from me." Sam, calm and composed, raised his hand slightly, showing no fear despite the obvious threat. "Gavin," Sam said gently, his voice steady and measured, "put the gun down, now." Gavin's grip tightened, his pulse pounding in his ears. "Don't tell me what to do. I see the way you two act. Too familiar, too close. I can't ignore it any longer." Sam sighed, his expression softening with empathy. "Gavin, I understand that this looks suspicious, and I know you're worried, but you're wrong. Rachel and I have never had anything beyond friendship. Every moment you've interpreted as closeness is entirely platonic." Gavin's jaw tightened. "How can I believe you? Every laugh, every touch, every glance, it all feels like something more. You've been part of her life for years. How am I supposed to compete with that?" Sam's eyes met Gavin's, unwavering in their honesty. "You don't have to compete. I've always respected your relationship with Rachel. She loves you, always has, always will. My role has been to support her, to be a friend when she needed one, nothing more." The words, calm and unwavering, began to pierce through the fog of jealousy clouding Gavin's mind. He lowered the gun slightly, the anger in his chest mingling with confusion and shame. I don't know what to think anymore," he admitted, his voice shaking. Sam placed a firm but reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Think about what you know to be true, Gavin. Rachel's love is yours. It has been from the start. Don't let your insecurities blind you to the reality in front of you." Gavin's mind raced, memories of the past weeks playing in rapid succession. He recalled Rachel's laughter with him, her affectionate gestures, the way she always sought his opinion and presence before anyone else's. The scenes that had fueled his jealousy now seemed distorted by his own fears. He realized that he had projected his insecurities onto moments of pure friendship, misreading gestures and smiles as something they were never intended to be. The weight of his misunderstanding pressed heavily upon him. "Rachel, she's mine," Gavin whispered, more to himself than to Sam, the realization settling in his heart. I let my fear take over. I let my jealousy blind me, and I hurt her." Sam nodded, his expression both sympathetic and encouraging. "It happens to the best of us, Gavin, but now you know the truth. You see it clearly. You can make things right if you act with honesty, humility, and love." With a shaky hand, Gavin placed the gun back in his pocket. He took a deep breath, the tension in his chest beginning to ease as clarity replaced suspicion. "Thank you, Sam," he said quietly. I needed to hear that. I let everything spiral out of control, and I almost lost sight of what really matters." Sam smiled, the warmth in his eyes reassuring Gavin further. "You haven't lost sight of it, not completely. Just remember this lesson. Trust her, trust yourself, and don't let fear dictate your actions again." Meanwhile, Rachel had been unaware of the private confrontation unfolding between Gavin and Sam. She continued to enjoy the party, mingling with guests, laughing softly, and feeling the genuine joy that Sam had intended for her. Yet, in the back of her mind, a lingering unease remained, an unshakable intuition that Gavin's emotions were still raw and unresolved. She knew him well enough to sense when he was struggling, and a small part of her worried that the reconciliation she hoped for might still be fraught with tension. After a few more moments, Gavin returned to the party, approaching Rachel cautiously. His eyes met hers, and for the first time in weeks, there was no tension, no accusation, only a raw and honest reflection of love and remorse. "Rachel," he said softly, taking her hands in his, I need to apologize. I let my jealousy take over, and I hurt you. I didn't see clearly, and I almost lost you because of my own insecurities." Rachel's eyes welled up with tears, a mixture of relief, joy, and lingering fear flooding her expression. "Gavin, I was so scared. I didn't know if you'd ever see the truth, but I love you, and I've always trusted you to come back to me." Gavin pulled her into a gentle embrace, holding her as if to never let go. "I see it now, Rachel. I understand. I know your heart is pure, and it has always been mine. I promise I won't let fear cloud my judgment again. You're my life, my love, and nothing will ever change that." Rachel rested her head on his chest, feeling the steady rhythm of his heart beneath her ear. "And you're mine, Gavin. Always have been, always will be." Sam watched the reunion from a short distance, a soft smile playing on his lips. He knew that his role in their lives was one of support, not interference, and he felt a quiet satisfaction in seeing the couple reconnect. He approached them, his voice gentle. "You two deserve happiness, without shadows of doubt. Now that the truth is out, I hope you can both move forward with clarity and trust." Gavin nodded, gratitude evident in his eyes. "Thank you, Sam, truly, for everything." The rest of the birthday celebration unfolded in a renewed atmosphere of joy and warmth. Gavin and Rachel moved through the crowd together, hand in hand, smiles genuine and hearts aligned. Laughter filled the air once more, the earlier tension dissolving like morning mist under the sunlight. The events of the past weeks, the jealousy, the misunderstandings, and the emotional turmoil had tested their love, but they had emerged stronger, more attuned to one another, and more committed to the trust that formed the foundation of their relationship. As the evening drew to a close, Gavin and Rachel stood outside, looking up at the star-filled sky. The crisp night air was filled with the soft sounds of the city settling into quiet. Gavin wrapped an arm around Rachel, holding her close. "I understand now," he whispered. "Love isn't about control or suspicion. It's about trust, understanding, and being there for each other. I'll never forget that again." Rachel smiled, resting her cheek against his chest. "And I'll always be here, Gavin, every step of the way. Together, always." The early morning air in Boston carried a quiet stillness, broken only by the soft rustle of leaves and distant city sounds. Gavin had been restless through the night, plagued by the memory of Rachel's despair, the weight of his jealousy, and the haunting thought of losing her forever. His heart pounded relentlessly as he raced through the city streets, each step fueled by fear, love, and the desperate need to set things right. He knew time was critical. Rachel's fragile state required immediate intervention, and he would not let his mistakes claim her. As he neared the spot where Rachel had often sought solitude during moments of sorrow, his eyes caught a glimpse of her pale figure standing at the edge of a bridge overlooking the river. The sight of her trembling and staring into the dark, swirling water sent a jolt of panic through him. "Rachel!" he shouted, his voice echoing across the quiet morning. Her head turned slightly, her eyes reflecting a mixture of despair and surprise. She had been lost in thought, teetering on the edge of hopelessness, unaware that Gavin's determination had brought him so close. Without hesitation, Gavin closed the distance between them. "Rachel, please, don't do this. Step back," he pleaded, his voice filled with raw emotion. Tears streamed down her face as she turned toward him, the weight of weeks of pain, jealousy, and misunderstanding evident in her expression.
"Gavin, I can't. I feel so lost," she whispered, her voice trembling. Gavin's eyes softened, his hands reaching out to gently grasp hers. "I know, love, I know, but I'm here now, and I promise you're not alone. I'll never let you go through this again." Rachel's shoulders shook as she sobbed, the release of pent-up anguish leaving her both vulnerable and relieved. Gavin pulled her into a protective embrace, his heart aching at the thought of her despair and the role he had played in it. "I'm so sorry, Rachel," he murmured, his lips brushing against her temple. "I let my jealousy and insecurity cloud my judgment. I pushed you away when I should have held you closer. Please forgive me." Rachel clung to him, her tears wetting his shirt as she whispered, "I forgive you, Gavin. I love you. Despite everything, I've never stopped loving you." For a long moment, they stood there, holding on to each other, the river beneath them flowing calmly as if mirroring the slow healing of their hearts. The fear, anger, and misunderstandings of the past weeks began to dissolve, replaced by a renewed sense of trust and commitment. Gavin gently lifted her chin, looking into her eyes. "Rachel, from this moment forward, no doubts, no insecurities, just us, together, honest and strong." She nodded, her smile tentative but filled with hope. "Together," she echoed, a soft, resolute promise. Once they returned home, the atmosphere in the Evans household felt markedly lighter. Peter and Nina were already awake, unaware of the morning's near tragedy, but sensing a change in the air. Rachel moved through the rooms with a calm grace, her laughter returning, quiet but genuine. Gavin stayed close, occasionally glancing at her with a mixture of awe and love. "You're amazing, Rachel," he said softly as they shared breakfast. "Even after everything, your strength amazes me." She smiled warmly, squeezing his hand. "And you, Gavin, have shown me how deeply you love me. We've both learned, haven't we?" Later that day, Sam called, his cheerful voice cutting through the tension of recent events. "Rachel, happy birthday again. I hope you're feeling better. I've got tickets to my latest concert tonight. You have to come, and I insist you bring Gavin along too." Rachel's eyes lit up, a hint of excitement returning to her expression. "Sam, that sounds wonderful. Thank you. Gavin, you're coming, right?" she asked, her hand brushing against his arm. Gavin smiled, genuine and unburdened by jealousy this time. "Of course, Rachel, I wouldn't miss it for the world. It's time we celebrate properly, together." At the concert, the venue buzzed with energy. Fans cheered, lights danced across the stage, and Sam's performance captivated everyone in attendance. Rachel watched him with admiration, enjoying the music while understanding that her connection with him was purely rooted in years of friendship and mutual support. Gavin, sitting beside her, observed the scene calmly, a sense of relief washing over him. The earlier insecurities had been replaced by clarity. He leaned closer to Rachel, whispering, "See, nothing to worry about. He's just a friend, and I should have trusted you all along." She laughed softly, resting her head on his shoulder. "I'm glad you see that now," she replied. After the concert, the trio met backstage. Gavin extended a hand to Sam, a genuine smile on his face. "Sam, I owe you an apology. I misjudged your relationship with Rachel and let my jealousy make me act irrationally. I'm sorry for any tension I caused." Sam shook his hand firmly, his expression warm and forgiving. "Gavin, I understand. Emotions can cloud judgment. I'm just glad we've cleared the air. Rachel's happiness has always been my priority, and now I can see that yours and hers are perfectly aligned." The night ended with laughter, shared memories, and a sense of unity that had been absent for weeks. Gavin and Rachel walked home hand in hand, the city lights shimmering around them. "I can't believe how close we came to losing each other over misunderstandings," Gavin said quietly. Rachel squeezed his hand, smiling. "It's a lesson, Gavin. Love requires trust, patience, and forgiveness. We've learned that now, haven't we?" He nodded, kissing her forehead gently. "Yes, and I promise never again will I let fear dictate my actions. Only love, understanding, and faith in us." Once home, the family gathered for a quiet moment together. Peter and Nina, sensing the restored harmony, smiled and laughed,
relieved to see the tension lifted. Rachel and Gavin shared a glance, a silent acknowledgement of their journey, the challenges they had overcome, and the resilience of their love. Sam, standing nearby, gave a playful grin. "Looks like the Evans household is back to normal," he said, earning a soft chuckle from Rachel. "Normal and happier than ever," she added. As the evening drew to a close, Gavin and Rachel sat together by the window, looking out at the calm city skyline. The soft glow of the lights reflected in their eyes, mirroring the warmth and peace that had finally returned to their hearts. "We made it," Rachel whispered, her head resting gently on his shoulder. "Yes, together," Gavin replied, wrapping his arm around her. The past weeks of turmoil, jealousy, and heartbreak now felt like distant memories, replaced by a deep, unwavering sense of love, forgiveness, and mutual understanding. In that quiet moment, they realized that life would continue to present challenges, but the bond they shared had been tested and strengthened. The fear, anger, and misunderstandings had been replaced by trust, respect, and a commitment to face the world together. Their love, forged through trials and strengthened by forgiveness, shone brighter than ever. And as they held each other close, the future seemed full of promise, warmth, and happiness, an ending that was truly heartfelt and complete.